Welcome to Chop Shop Motors. My name is Clay, and with any luck, this will be the final wrap-up segment of the 30-day truck build. So some of the work that I did in between what you saw last was some of the detail pieces, or not really detail, but like last straggling pieces to get it running under its own power. I put the fuel tank in, you saw that. I was hoping, had my fingers crossed, that the fuel line would be fine and that we could get fuel up to the fuel pump and then up to the carburetor. And you know, that was a nice wish, and I admire my optimism, but the reality was that every step of the way it was going to fight me, and it did. So I got fuel tank in, I put some fuel in it, I redid or cleaned out the carburetor. It was super nasty, and put it on, and I had the fuel pump look like, you know, it didn't look like it'd been on the trunk since 55. So I had a little bit of hope that the fuel pump would work. And, you know, I filled the float bowl up and got it started, and it wouldn't pick up any fuel. So then I just started kind of troubleshooting the system, and the fuel line was plugged solid. So I pulled the fuel line out of the truck, which is, you know, kind of a pain because it goes under the radiator and around the front of the front cross member and then back up over to the passenger side of the truck. And I pulled that off, and it had a pinhole in it, or it was broken, like corroded through in a little spot that I wouldn't have been able to see. So I just started messing with the fuel line and ended up replacing a large portion of the fuel line, the hard line from the tank up to the fuel pump. So I replaced that. That was pretty, you know, kind of time consuming. Got that on. So again, I'm assuming good things. I took my vacuum pump and pulled some fuel through the line and took that first, you know, kind of few pulls of crappy fuel out of the fuel line as things flushed out, and got rid of it. And so good progress, got the fuel line. So now we have gas all the way from the tank up through the fuel line. And I hook up the fuel pump, and I'm thinking, well, I mean, fuel line was plugged, it's probably gonna pump. Well, bottom line, it didn't pump, and I ended up pulling the fuel pump off and opened it up, and it looked great on the outside, but it had water. It had water in it at some point in its life. So when I pulled it open, it was super corroded inside, and I'm like, man, my chances of having this ever work are probably slim and none. But I did the same thing that I've done to every other part, you know, on this old truck. And I mean, if you've ever played with this kind of stuff or you enjoy it, I mean, that's part of the journey, is, you know, taking old pieces that probably shouldn't work anymore, or right on the edge of being scrapped, and seeing if you can kind of resuscitate them into service. So got all of the buildup out of the fuel pump. The little diaphragms, there's a couple small diaphragms, or one-way valves in the fuel pump. Those seem to be still pretty soft and supple. I don't know how old the fuel pump is, and it obviously hasn't had this modern gas in it, because the modern gas is really hard on them. The diaphragm looked good, and there's a secondary gasket diaphragm at the top. All of those looked usable. So I did the best I could to get it all cleaned up and get everything kind of back in shape. I checked, and it wouldn't pull any vacuum before I pulled it off. And so got it all back together, and it would pull some vacuum. So that was a really good sign. Got it back on. It had an inline fuel filter. I took a look at the inline fuel filter, and it was actually rusted out. So there'd been water in the system. That's why the gas tank looks so crappy. And then, you know, as we chase it up, it's all the way up to the very carburetor. So I put a new fuel, inline fuel filter on it, and lo and behold, we got the fuel system to work. The accelerator pump still doesn't work in the carburetor. It didn't heal itself. I ordered a kit for it, but for our intents and purposes for what we're doing today, you know, I wasn't going to worry about it. I had also bled the brakes. So as you know, put new rubber hoses, some new steel line, new kit, wheel cylinder kits in the old cylinders, and rebuilt a master cylinder for it. And so, you know, we had probably an 80% chance of good things happening. So I took my vacuum pump and bled the brakes, and it's got a good pedal, and they seem to function. So, and the emergency brake works. So, yay for that. Good progress there. The next step is going to be to actually see if I can start it and keep it, you know, have it continue to run. And without an accelerator pump, it's a little tricky, so I'll have to get it warmed up. I filled it up with water. I didn't put any antifreeze in it. I'll pull that out. And as things progress on this truck, kind of phase 2 of this old truck, I'll do some other stuff to it. But for what we're doing, water's fine. And basically at this point, I'm going to give you a little walk around of the truck, and we're going to see if we're going to get the chase vehicle ready with a tow chain and a tow strap. That's actually a tow chain, and a would-be driver for the chase vehicle. And I'm going to take it out and see if it'll go around the block and see if we can call ourselves victorious. So let's do a quick walk around, and then we'll do a quick drive around. Well, here's Chopper. It is as done as it's going to be, other than whatever things happen on this drive around the block that keep me from getting it home. Hopefully no wheels will fall off, no things will burst into flames. I did, however, put a fire extinguisher on the front seat just to hedge my bet, keep the fire department from having to be called in case of something crazy happening. And there it is. It's a whole truck. It's got plates on it. It's basically, you know, a scrappy old truck that is kind of cool. So I'm gonna go see if I can round up a camera holder to do a little filming, and I'm gonna go around the block. Okay, no flames. I'll try to stay away from the fan.
Any last words of advice?
Yeah, here's the keys to the chase vehicle. There's a tow chain in it. I'm gonna go straight, hang a right, come back. So,
Great. Vaya con Dios.
you're gonna go out to the street and watch me in the
You can do it. I believe in you.
You should be talking to Chopper.
First time out of the do?
We have success.
It smells a little bit.
Well, that's the first time it's probably driven in, I don't know, 25 years or more. It did pretty good. It just died just now, so.
Are you happy?
Rather than test the gods, I figured I'd just turn the key off.
Yeah, are you happy with it?
I'm happy. The 30-day truck build is done. So I kind of ended that video a little abruptly as I pulled the truck in and shut it off. And I wanted to add a couple other details and give just a little bit of insight into what we're going to do moving forward. This has been a really fun project. We spent, I got help from, various people helping to move stuff around and keep it moving. Shelby's been, very involved in keeping both the channel going and this build going. So a big shout out to her, and lots of support from, from my wife for being able to come out here and do this stuff. And, all the things that we often don't acknowledge or say thank you to, that all of us probably feel as we work on projects and move stuff forward. Very excited to have brought this project from an idea probably a year ago to do something like this all the way full circle to actually going around the block. So going around the block probably doesn't really may not seem like a huge testament of success, but when you build something out of basically a pile of parts and you get it all together and it will function and go around a certain area under its own power, it really is a success. So I feel super happy to have accomplished this. 30 days, I probably have spent 30 days working on it. It took a little bit longer than I figured it would, but isn't that the naive part of us as humans that allows us to continue to jump into projects like this? I've put together and worked on a lot of these F100s, so it wasn't exactly uncharted territory for me, and I had a fair amount of parts. And I have, a decent amount of tools to be able to do some of this stuff at some level anyway. And so I'm super fortunate for that. We started the project, got all the way through to the end and drove it around the block. That doesn't necessarily mean that this project is done, but it is done for this series. We're going to do something different as we move forward, and what we're going to work on next will be some different stuff. We may come back to this truck and do something with it, and I'll probably work on it in a couple months or so, as as the getting tired of working on it wears off and I enjoy playing with it. I do have some parts coming for it. I have a carburetor kit coming, so it'll have an accelerator pump, and I need to probably put some plugs and plug wires and a valve cover gasket and change of oil and kind of start to do that stuff that you do to something when it feels like it's going to live. The motor seems to run pretty decent, and I'm fortunate for that. It has a little bit of blow-by and leaks some oil, but all I've got is old Fords, and they all mark their territory, so that doesn't seem like really that different. Moving forward, the next projects that we're going to do, I'm going to take all of the parts that are sort of look like the gray truck. When we're filming some of the 30-day truck build, you'll see kind of behind Chopper, you'll see the other parts and pieces to another F100. I'm going to shift the location of that a little bit and kind of cover it up and save it for down the road just a little bit. And we're going to pull the 72 F100 up in that spot and tear into that. So that's going to be the next 30-day truck build, is going to be Shelby's truck. I've got to freshen up the motor, the transmission, the rear end. The goal is to lower it. I've got a drop kit for the rear. I've got to buy some beams for the front. Probably change the steering box. We're going to do a bunch of work on it, and we're going to do it fast. And it's a pretty good amount of work, but it's going to be neat. hopefully we can then get it lined up to get painted as the next step, and really have a fun little truck there. It will be substantially different than the 30-day truck build. We won't cut corners. If something doesn't look right or something isn't going to make the long haul, then we'll fix it or change it or replace it. I want to be able to hop in this truck, and I want to be able to have Shelby hop in it, and if we want to head to Pomona and do the swap meet, we can do that. So these trucks, these 68 to 72 trucks, were made to drive. I've had a slew of them. I've driven a lot of miles in them, and they drive really well. So there is no reason this one won't be super roadworthy. It's already got air, it's already a power steering, power brake, automatic truck, so we're way ahead in a lot of areas. It just needs a little TLC, and we're going to give it to it. So that's going to be the next 30-day project. It's going to be fun. Hopefully Shelby will have a little bit of time to come over and work on it and do some other stuff while we're there. It always builds a little enthusiasm when you see progress on your truck. She's had this truck since she was 16. We built it out of really an abandoned vehicle on the side of the road, and she drove it for probably 6 or 7 years and used it for her everyday transportation in high school and then in college, and it just got a little tired and the rear end broke, and so we did a plan B real quick, and it's been in plan B mode for a few years now, so time to get it back to rolling up and rolling down the road. That was the overview. Thank you so much for following along. We gained some subscribers. We're a little bitty channel. We don't gain very much, and we don't get a ton of views, so anytime we gain another subscriber, it feels like a victory. And we may do one last overview on the truck, the 30-day build. I'll see if Shelby wants to do that or not. If we do, we do, and if we don't, then this is the last one. Thanks for following along. I'm Clay for Chop Shop Motors, and we'll see you on the next project.